Welcome, 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 everybody. My name is Farrington, and I am the festival manager for Out on Film. And I have the wonderful opportunity to introduce Loveleen, who is joining us as a filmmaker from that lovely, amazing documentary we just watched, Leilaini's Fortune. Loveleen, go ahead and tell us about yourself, where you're calling in from, and yeah, hi. Anything you want to add or intro?
First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. I haven't got to spend time in Georgia, but I really, like just most positive things I always hear. And currently I'm in Chicago. We just had a screening, our first American international premiere at Reeling. Thank you. And so I'm in my hotel and I'm heading off to Palm Springs for a screening at Cinema Diverse. So, you know, like I appreciate Out on Film and like all the American festivals just giving so much love. And it feels really validating that something that felt so personal is really resonating with people. And, I was watching this film and like the first time I'm seeing it kind of after like 6 months after finishing it and like actually seeing it as an audience member, this film, it really, like I wrote it, it was almost like a letter to myself, capturing this wisdom of, a queer woman, a Black woman, an artist who has navigated trying to live on her own terms. And I realized while I was watching it in Chicago this week, I was just like, oh, like this is just us, like this is capturing the wisdom, like everything I need to hear anytime I have that moment of self-doubt, or like what it means to just like I just want this to be a way. And I think for Leilaini too, is like, why do we have to keep recreating the wheel? Like when, like queer artists have been doing this from time and they struggle with the exact same feelings and the exact same thoughts. And like, let's just capture this moment of, you know, validation and feeling seen.
I thank you so much. One, the film, as far as validation, I resonate with that a lot. Myself, personally speaking, just being from the Caribbean, kind of having that identity crisis, and being queer as well, and just kind of figuring out my place in space and navigating a world that intends to silence you and actively silences you. I think that's why we do resonate with these stories and value. I think Leilani Rich Profits just story. I think, like you're saying, a lot of people do resonate with it. I mean, the mental health is something that I thought was very, very passionate and very, very clearly and respectfully kind of explored in this documentary. So even to go back, maybe I wanted to ask, yeah, you talked about the personal story and note to yourself. I want to ask what drove you to, I guess, Witch Prophet, and what drove you to Leilani and to say and start that process, if you don't mind.
Yeah, like it's so funny. I had a friend years ago that said like sometimes making the movie is a movie on its own. You know what I mean? And so it's really funny because I feel like art making and just be we are all creative beings. Like to be a divine being is to be a creator, and capitalism teaches you that you like as we're kids, we're all in coloring books and painting, and then like we just have to shut that part of ourselves down. And it's so commodified, and it feels like, everything feels so. And Leilani struggles through that too, right? Where you're like, how do I prove that I am this? And I didn't even know what, and a lot of what I realized through this project and watching Leilani is a lot of it is synchronicity and divine timing and like listening, just like listening and holding it and like not trying to push something that's not right. Anyway, so I met Leilani actually in the film, like while she was on her mental health break. And I met her at a friend's house, Lido Pimienta, who is featured in the film, and she won a Latin Grammy Award like last 2 years ago, and it was I was like, these are cool people, Leilani and Sansa, but I didn't know, I hadn't heard about who she was beforehand. And then she did the show at the Art Gallery of Ontario, and that's a scene in there, and I was at that show, and I didn't know that was the first time she was performing as Witch Prophet. And I remember in the Art Gallery of Ontario is a very traditionally like white space. And for her, and I'm not a Black person, But for her to just take up that space, and the song like we feature, she's like, like, and this was during the time of Black Lives Matter. We were also having a movement in Toronto against police brutality, and like 2016, and she was just like, she sang a song in that she's like, I am Black. And like at the beginning, she said, all of the Black folks and people of color come to the front. And I was like, I was like, and honestly, that room, like if you get the ability to see her, it's chills. I still feel chills. Like I have goosebumps just thinking about that performance. And that was
Wow,
5 years before the film.
that's magical. That's magic. Wow.
Yeah. So, I saw her get nominated. I followed her journey from that. A lot of the covers she talks about, I collected them. I didn't even know. I was just like, wow, like this is so amazing. Like I saw her in the newspaper. And then I started the project by interviewing somebody she actually mentored. And that person kept saying, which prophet, which prophet? And I was like, what? Like, what? And then I realized I gotta go to the heart of the story. And during that time, especially during the pandemic, you saw, all of these sort of tokenistic representation things, but no follow through. And I see her getting nominated for these really amazing, like critical awards in Canada, Prism, Polaris, things like that. But it just keeps like she just kept hitting these plateaus. And so I hit her up and I said, listen, man, like there's a story here we need to talk about. And during that time, like Grimes, who is, was dating Elon Musk, she's also from Canada. She got like a $400,000 grant from the Canadian government, and a similar grant that like, Which Prophet like didn't even get, I think. So I was like, we really need to do this story. And when I said, hey, I called her up, I was so nervous. And she was just like, yes, I have been waiting. I knew, I said it for 10 years, somebody's going to make my documentary. And she handed me a hard drive of like 100, like 10 years of like archive footage. And I make the joke where I'm like, I think she had the prophecy. I just was like there to fulfill it. So that's kind of, people like, how did I was like, I don't know, man. I think she just like manifested it. Okay. I'm just here. I just got she said 10 years ago somebody's gonna make her documentary, and like so
That
that's synchronicity and
That's an
divine
amazing
timing.
origin. That's an amazing origin story. No, I think for sure, like you said, in all the timing as well. You're talking about just like um, where she was, where she could be in that category, in that space where other folks are dominating. I thought that was a magnificent an important piece because especially when you talk about Canada and you think about queer and you think the progressiveness, it's like, but for queer Black people there, it's a very different space. And I thought that it was definitely, I think, explored very finely by her as well. But I thought as well, just you see the unique struggle and just this unique diaspora where it's like the talent is beyond measure, in my opinion, just having listening to this documentary and just being in the space continuously, like it is really powerful music and life-changing music and healing music. This documentary talked a lot about healing. I wanted to ask, how was it kind of exploring? I know you said at this point you kind of gravitate towards you. What was the conversation and what was it like to kind of explore that mental health journey with them?
Well, it was like, with I'm a self-taught filmmaker, so I did a lot of community-based workshops, like connected with mentors, would go to like festivals. And one of my mentors, he often said, with documentary, you can only plan for 20%, and the other 80, you gotta like just let it flow. And it's really hard when you like have anxiety, you're an artist, you have a grant, you have deadlines. And actually, like, I had no idea that that was not the intention of the original exploration of the film. But immediately in our first interview, the Zoom interview, that was like a pre-interview. And she, when she started talking about that, I was like, this is really important. This is an important thread. And this is also during COVID. This is during pandemic lockdown. I also got COVID. Like I have long COVID. All of my crew, majority of my crew was queer, racialized folks. I made a very like strong intention to do that. And they all, like, you know, as queer people, especially racialized queer people, immigrants, children of immigrants, it's like we don't have those support systems. And what I realized, because we were doing this during the pandemic, it was really hard. Like it felt like it was a slog because first, trying to find racialized queer crew. Secondly, who were available because there's such a limitation. And secondly, every single person was dealing with like burdens, like the weight of life in a way that when you have your families, like straight people don't really ever get to understand how isolating it feels sometimes when you don't have those innate heteronormative structures to protect you and catch you. Um, and so, and like, you know, I was navigating the health system at the same time, trying to like, and so I just realized like, I, it, when we were trying to make the story, it just became more and more clear that that was the climax of
Wow.
choosing herself, you know. And during the film I had to do that too. Like my capacity was so limited, you know, it's lockdown, everybody is struggling, our parents, our family, our friends, like people are going through so much, you know. You don't I didn't have a job for a while, like, you know, everybody's going to debt, we're supporting each other, you know, queer people were like a web. And when the weight starts coming down, we're all feeling it because how much capacity does everybody have to like support each other? um and I thought that in Canada, we have a way of talking about racism as if it like doesn't exist. And I love Witch Prophet. I've always loved Witch Prophet because she always is such a powerful truth teller. She like doesn't hide, even since I met her. And that's why I was like, I need, because you're gonna tell me the truth. Like, and um I think all of those years of us knowing each other and her knowing of me and her knowing of me in community and I know her in community, that she trusted me to hold her story. And I took that trust with the utmost care. Like I held it like you know, I just really wanted to honor her story. And for me, sorry, long way, but for me, I realized like even myself as I was going through health issues, as I was letting like having my reduced like capacity and COVID and stress and whatever. Uh and I used to be a community organizer. So I really was like, you got to be on the streets. And I actually did for the first few months of pandemic. I was like and then I sprained my ankle, twisted my knee. I was like, well, you don't got this in you anymore. Like you can't do this. You gotta. So it was really hard for me to like just sit only with the film and choose myself, choose my art, and just like have those blinders on when to feel like that art is valuable, it serves a purpose, even though you don't know why. Like, why am I sitting in front of a computer when everybody is like seeing their family, going on vacation, doing all this thing, and I'm stuck here just struggling. But I'm really glad it's the way, like, I'm really proud of it. Anyways, long-winded,
No, I love
long-winded
that. That
answer.
was like so emotional. I got a little emotional there. Just yeah, no, I think in terms of it, just that trust level, that opening up, I think is super important because when you I just reflecting on that film, reflecting how deep and honest and true, you know, there was a not a bit, like you said, that I think was like um hidden. I think like, you know, Leilaini is very truthful on you know, just her values, her morals, you know, what her experiences are. You know, she even mentioned and talked about the reason I was getting a little emotional too is just when she was talking about as well, just going to the doctors and talking about care and getting treatment and what that response is. You know, and I think about you know, just how much, like you're saying, brown, racialized folks, people of color, Black, Indigenous people of color, how they you know, are never afforded that access to care, are never taken into account of how you know, things were prior to COVID and what COVID has spiraled in magnitude onto us. So it's like a story that I think a lot of people can resonate with. A story about mental health when you're talking about health in general and overcoming. There was something beautiful there as well. Sorry. But just to add on to that,
I
thank you.
love it. I love hearing this. Thank
I,
you.
I yeah, I really thought this was just a magnificent piece, and yeah, and I was going to ask, yeah, as far as what might be in the works, what can we look forward to, any, and or better yet, I probably want to ask you just about the response, I think, as well. I think maybe the community impact you mentioned being kind of a community activist being engaged. What was it like to kind of bring this message back to your community, back to your group, and what was their response been to this, and any feedback they might want to share?
Well, like in our first screening was in Toronto at Inside Out Film Festival. It was really important for me to do a hometown screening. And honestly, it felt like a party.
That
And it in the best way. Like people just felt like there was people were laughing, people were cheering, people were crying. And I know for Witch Prophet, it was really a deeply emotional moment because she just felt like after, especially for like for somebody who's been fighting to be seen, and it's like to be like, I think it was even she herself got a moment to like reflect on her journey. And like you folks don't know, but like in the film is like dozens of queer Toronto artists featured in the background, in the photos, in the like, and a lot of them were there. And a lot of them, you know, like just also felt because there are a lot of queer artists, like, they also felt like this was an archiving of Toronto queer history, Toronto racialized queer history, a Toronto like outside of the Drake cover. And like, I don't think people understand what Toronto is. And this was my love story to Toronto. Like, this is the kind of thing you can run into. This is the kind of talent, the magic that exists here. And Leilaini actually told me this weekend, she texted me, she's like, I had a show on the street and some random people walked in and said they watched the film and they like loved it. And but I think this is a film that, like most racialized queer artists, like this is a film that's gonna build over time. And the joke is I'm like, when you win your Grammy, you're gonna call me back in 10 years. Then we're gonna do a real then we're gonna do a big documentary. And this is a film that for me is honoring, this is our happy ending. Like we don't get films that are a happy ending. I didn't know, like, what does a life look like for us? Like we don't see that. And so some people see it as a film about like a rising star, which is true, but she's older. Like, she looks great, but she's not a young, she's not, she deserves. So to me, this is an artist who's actually made it. This is somebody like, what else do I want? What else do you want? As a queer person, as racialized immigrant, like, living in these capitalist white supremacist societies, she's living her truth as an artist. Isn't that success? I don't know. So to me, that's the win, and I think it's gonna have a slow burn over a few years, especially as Witch Prophet star rises. So we'll check back in a few years what the impact has been.
No, that's super, super, I mean, amazing. I thank you so much. Loveleen, I wanted to thank you again for just making this documentary, sharing this story. I thought that this documentary was powerful. I thought that this documentary is one for everyone. I feel like every mental health affects everyone, racism affects everyone, health and access to resources and being treated fair is just something that we continue to fight today. This I think Witch Prophet and Leilani's Fortune definitely is on brand with our Defiantly Queer theme this year, which has been amazing. If you've been checking out our campaign art, Defiantly Queer just in her own space, in her own realm, not allowing the industry to kind of navigate what that might mean for what you're supposed to mean and what that looks like. It's like, and also removing herself and having the capacity to dabble and still choosing very righteous grounds. And I think just very powerful person, just a very powerful documentary story. Everything that I think she said was wisdom and just nourishment to my body and soul. So as well as the music, just the music was just Eating. Yes, I have yeah, downloaded and saved some songs on my phone. So all that to say, this film as well as the rest of our films on the festival will be streaming until October about the 8th. Feel free to vote, share this film. It is available for streaming in Georgia and nationally as well. So yeah, I thank you so much again for joining us here.
Thank you.
Checking in and when she gets that Grammy, I'm gonna call you up and say, hey,
Listen,
he
VIP
called
party
it.
friend. Yeah,
Called it.
let's do
Yeah,
it.
no.
Manifest. Let's put those altars up.
Yeah,
You know
called
what I
it.
mean?
We called it for sure. It's gonna be no time soon. I'm sure of it. Thank you so much, Loveleen.
Thank you. Well,
Um,
I love the theme, and in this time and this day and age, like some people see queerness as a costume, and queerness is inherently political. Queerness is inherently resistance, and in this time and age, we need to take up all that fucking space
oh yeah.
and channel our ancestors of Marsha P. Johnson and Audre Lorde, and really, we can't hold back. We can't hold back. And so I really am thankful to be a part of this really amazing, like the intention you folks are putting out there, especially when there's such an attack on us. It feels scary, but I also feel like we have people. We have people. We're going to be like, this is just our, to be queer is to exist in the apocalypse and existentialism at all times. And at Reeling, I got the chance to see the film Chocolate Babies.
Mm.
And like, this is our job. Disruption is
Yep.
our job. And I'm
Defines.
in
Yep.
solidarity, Farrington. I'm excited to do this. And, I'm so thankful I got to be a part of your, like the theme of this year. So please bring me out to Atlanta. Anybody, I will move there.
we're, we're so looking forward to what's next, Loveleen. We thank you for this documentary. We thank you
Thank
for
you so much.
putting that space out there and putting us on screen to feel seen and to feel heard. I again, y'all, please do enjoy this film, like, share, vote on this film. This film is in competition, so feel free to share, pack the seats. We thank you all so much, and yeah, cheers. Have a
Follow me on amissingpiece.ca Instagram.
You've heard that already. Cheers.
Thanks, man.